Hey everybody, welcome back. We got another deck for you. This one is a fun one. I've really enjoyed this one. This is a mono red deck with partner commanders. The partners are Jessica Thrice Reborn. It's 2 and a red. She's a legendary planeswalker. She enters the battlefield with a loyalty counter on it for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. She starts out with 0, so you cast 1, you cast 2, it goes up slowly. But her 0 is choose a target creature. Until your next turn, if that creature would deal combat damage to one of your opponents, it deals triple that damage to that player instead. Or you can minus X her, and she deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. So if she's 1, you minus 3, you can deal 1 damage to 3 targets. Yeah, it's not bad. It's got a little spot on that. I don't like that. The partner is Kedis Emberclaw Familiar, 1 and a red. Whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. It's a 1/1. So as you see, with these two working together, you can pop them out here. 0 him, he deals triple damage, and then when he hits one player, he deals it. So you have a 1/1 to one player, it deals 1 to each, or 3 to each. So it's a fun little combo there. You can buff them up and do anything. But the main name of the deck is Goblin Riders. And the reason I have it called that is because I combine some goblins and some dragons in this deck with a Nextwood Mask Underwood, something like that, which makes them all the same creatures, or every creatures. So you get the benefits of both. Which when Maskwood Nexus, that's what it is, Maskwood Nexus. Well, I'll explain it again when we get to it, but that's the idea. So let's go ahead and we'll set these aside because I'm going to need room here. All right, we got a mountain. We have an arcane lighthouse. You tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it. Until end of turn, creatures your opponents control lose hexproof and shroud, and can't have hexproof or shroud. We got Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. It's a legendary land. You tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 2 to tap it and choose a color. Add an amount of mana to that color equal to your devotion. So your devotion are the little pips on the top right there. So if you have these two cards out, that's 4 red. So you tap it for 2, you gain 4, so you're gaining 2. So it's a good way to ramp some stuff up there. We've got the Dragon Speaker Shaman. You pay 1 and 2 red, and dragon spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. It's a 2/2. Then we have Ojer Anoxil, Deepest Might, 2 and 2 red. It's trample. If a red source you control would deal an amount of non-combat damage less than Ojer Oxnil's power to an opponent, that source deals damage equal to Ojer's power instead. So if I hit a lightning bolt that does 3 damage, this will bump it up to 4 damage instead. And then when it dies, you return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. It's a 4/4. Temple of Power, you tap it for red, or you can pay 2 and a red to tap it. To transform it, activate only if red sources you controlled dealt 4 or more non-combat damage this turn, and only as a sorcery. We've got a mountain. Koth, Fire of Resistance, 2 and 2 red. He's a legendary planeswalker. I like him a lot. He's got a +2 to search your library for a basic mountain card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. This is great because red also, like white, does not have a lot of ramp stuff. Its -3 is it deals damage to target creature equal to the number of mountains you control. And it has -7, you get an emblem with whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target. It's and has 4 loyalty. Balefire Dragon, 5 and 2 red. Flying, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. It's a 6/6. Commander's Plate, 1 mana. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color that's not in your commander's color identity. Equip Commander 3, or equip another creature for 5. So you add this onto Kedis, that makes him a 4/4. You 0 him from Jeska, so he'll deal 12 damage, and then if you hit it one player, you'll deal 12 damage to that player, and then 12 damage to each other opponent. So that's a fun little combo you get going on there. We got a mountain, another mountain, another mountain. Two-headed dragon, 4 and 2 red. Flying, you can pay 1 in a red, and it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Two-headed dragon can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, basically menace. And two-headed dragon may block an additional creature. It's a 4/4. Got another mountain. Wand of Wonder. It's 3 and a red. You can pay 4 mana to tap it and roll a d20. Each opponent exile cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card, then shuffle the rest into their library. You may cast up to X instant and or sorcery spells from among the cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. And then on the die set, it's 1 to 9 is 1, 10 to 19 is 2, and a natural 20 is 3. Dragon Mage, 5 and 2 red. Whenever it has flying, whenever Dragon Mage deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. It's a 5/5. Another mountain. Coveted Jewel, 6 mana. When it enters, you draw 3 cards. Add 3 mana of any one color. Whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attacks you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel. Untap it. A mountain and a mountain. Laughless Dragon Queen, 4 and 2 red. Flying, whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. Pay 1 in red, and dragons you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. It's a 6/6. We have another mountain. We have a Myriad Landscape. It enters tapped, and you can pay to add a colorless. Or you can pay 2 to tap it and sacrifice it. Search your library for 2 basic land cards that share a land type, these mountains. Then put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Abrade, 1 and a red. Choose 1. Abrade deals 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. Hellkite Tyrant, 4 and 2 red. It's flying trample. Whenever Hellkite Tyrant deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. It's a 6/5. Opportunistic Dragon, 2 and 2 reds. Flying. When it enters, choose target human or artifact an opponent controls. For as long as it remains on the battlefield, gain control of that permanent. It loses all abilities and can't attack or block. And another mountain. Electrodominance, X and 2 red. It's an instant. Electrodominance deals X damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So if you had 5 mana that you pumped into this, 3 and then to the 2 reds, you do 3 damage to a target, and then you may cast a 3 or less mana, CMC mana card from your hand without paying its mana cost. Another mountain. Inquisitorial Rosette, 2 mana. Whenever an equipped creature attacks, create a 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature token with vigilance that's attacking. Then attacking creatures gain menace until end of turn. 3 mana equip cost. Gratuitous Violence, 2 and 3 red. It's an enchantment. If a creature you control would deal damage to a creature or player, it deals double that damage to a creature or player instead. Cranko Mob Boss, 2 and 2 red. You tap it to create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. It's a 3/3. Goblin Motivator, 1 red. Tap it, and target creature gains haste until end of turn. It's a 1/1. Goblin War Chief, 1 and 2 red. Goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Goblins you control have haste. It's a 2/2. Sword of Hearth and Home. It's a 3 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature has +2/+2 and has protection from green and white. When equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card. Put both cards onto the battlefield under your control, then shuffle. Equip cost 2. Soul Ring, 1 mana, taps to add 2 colorless. Goblin Bombardment, 1 and a red. Sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to any target. It's an enchantment. Goblin Trash Master, 2 and 2 red. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. Sacrifice a goblin to destroy target artifact. It's a 3/3. A mountain. We have Squee, Dubious Monarch, 2 and a red. It has haste. Whenever Squee attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. You may cast Squee from your graveyard by paying 3 and a red and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard rather than paying its mana cost. It is a 2/2. Pyroblast, 1 red. Choose 1, counter target spell if it's blue, or destroy target permanent if it's blue. Decanter of Endless Water, 3 mana. You have no maximum hand size, add a mana of any color. Anger, 3 and a red. Haste, as long as Anger is in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. Repeated Reverberation, 2 and 2 red. It's an instant. When you next cast an instant spell, cast a sorcery spell, or activate a loyalty ability this turn. Copy that spell or ability twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. Frontier Warmonger, 3 and a red. Whenever one or more of your creatures attack one of your opponents or a planeswalker they control, those creatures gain menace until end of turn. It's a 4/4. War's Toll, 3 and a red. It's an enchantment. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, tap all lands that player controls. If a creature an opponent controls attacks, all creatures that opponent controls attacks, if able. Goblin Sharpshooter, 2 and a red. Goblin Sharpshooter doesn't untap during your untap step. Whenever a creature dies, untap Goblin Sharpshooter. Goblin Sharpshooter deals 1 damage to any target as you tap it. It is a 1/1. We have a mountain. Thundermaw Hellkite, 3 and 2 red. Flying, haste. When Thundermaw Hellkite enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. Tap those creatures. It's a 5/5. Swiftfoot Boots, 2 mana cost, artifact equipment. Equip creature has hexproof and haste. Equip cost 1. Sword of Feast and Famine, 3 mana cost, equip artifact equipment. Equip creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from black and green. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. 2 equip cost. Zeralon of the Claw, 3 mana and 2 red. You can pay a mana and 2 red to tap it. Search your library for a dragon permanent card. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. That dragon gains haste until the end of turn. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. 3 and a 4. A 3/4 power toughness. Aggravated Assault, 2 mana and a red. It's an enchantment. You can pay 3 mana and 2 red to untap all creatures you control. If it's a main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Activate only as a sorcery. Sword of the Animist, 2 mana. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. And whenever equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. Equipped cost 2. It's a good ramp because red doesn't have a lot of that. Mana Charged Dragon, 4 and 2 red. Flying Trample. Whenever Mana Charged Dragon attacks or blocks, each player starting with you may pay an amount of mana. Mana Charged Dragon gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the amount of total mana paid this way. It's a 5/5. And a mountain. Let's take a quick drink. All right. We have Drakuseth, Maw of Flames. 4 and 3 red. Flying, whenever it attacks, you deal 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. It's a 7/7. Vandal Blast, 1 red. You destroy target artifact you don't control. Or you can pay 4 and a red, and you destroy each artifact you don't control for its overlord cost. Blood Moon, 2 and a red. Enchantment. Non-basic lands or mountains This works great for shutting people down. They also get really mad at you, so be careful. Goblin Chirurgeon, 1 red. Sacrifice a goblin. Regenerate target creature. It's an 0/2. Hoarding Dragon, 3 and 2 red. Flying. When it enters, you may search your library for an artifact card, exile it, then shuffle your library. When Hoarding Dragon dies, you may put the exiled card into its owner's hand. It's a 4/4. Sword of Light and Shadow, 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from white and black. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you gain 3 life, and you may return a target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Equip cost 2. Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin, 2 mana and a red. Whenever Krenko attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power. It is a 1/2. Killmouth Dragon, 5 and 2 red. Amplify 3. As this creature enters battlefield, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it for each dragon you reveal in your hand. Flying, you can then tap it to deal damage equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on it to target creature or player. It is a 5/5. Sneak Attack, 3 and a red. It's an enchantment. You can pay a red to put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste. You sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step. Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. It enters tapped. Whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have Valakut deal 3 damage to any target. Taps for red. Mountain. Smoke, Spirit's Aid, X and a red. For each of up to X target creatures, create a red aura enchantment token named Smoke Blessing attached to that creature. Those tokens have enchant creature, and when enchanted creature dies, it deals 1 damage to its controller, and you create a treasure token. So if I pay 5 mana into it, 4 for the X and 1 for the red, that means I will target 4 target creatures. They'll each gain that enchantment, and when they die, it'll deal 4 damage to its controller, and I create 4 treasures. If it's on the same one, you can split it between different opponents. But Goldspan Dragon, 3 and 2 red, flying haste. Whenever it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. And treasures you control have tap this and sacrifice this artifact to add 2 mana of any one color rather than 1 mana. And it is 4/4. Armillary Sphere, that's 2 mana. You pay 2 and tap it to sacrifice it, and search your library for 2 basic lands, reveal them, put into your hand, then shuffle. Goblin Wizard, 2 and 2 red. You may put a goblin permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Pay a red, and target goblin gains protection from white until end of turn. That's a 1/1. Pyromancer's Goggles, 5 mana. Legendary artifact. You tap and add a red. When that mana is spent to cast a red instant or sorcery spell, you copy that spell and choose new targets for the copy. Mountain. Horde of Bogarts, 3 and a red. Horde of Bogarts' power and toughness are equal to the number of red permanents you control. Horde of Bogarts can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, so it also has menace. Red Dragon, 4 and 2 red, flying. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. It's a 4/4. Mountain. Sword of War and Peace, 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and white. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of War and Peace deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand, and you gain 1 life for each card in your hand. All right, let's make some more room here. So yeah, if you're starting to see the combos already, once you get the dragon and the goblin stuff out, and you get Maskwood Nexus out to make them all the same, the dragons benefit the goblins benefit the dragons, and it can get a lot of fun. Thawing Glaciers, it enters tapped. You pay a mana and tap it. You search your library for a basic land card, put that color onto battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Return Thawing Glaciers to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next cleanup step. It's another good ramp thing to use for red. Reliquary Tower. You have no maximum hand size. Tap to add a colorless. Mana Geyser. 3 and 2 red. You add a red mana to your mana pool for each tapped land your opponents control. Chain Reaction. 2 and 2 red. Chain Reaction deals X damage to each creature where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. So that can get pretty big. Staff of the Flame Mages. 3 mana. Whenever you cast a red spell or a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Skull Clamp. 1 mana. Equipped creature gets +1/-1, and then whenever equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards. Equip cost 1. Treasure Nabber. 2 and a red. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of your next turn. It's a 3/2. Mountain. Burnout. 1 and a red. Counter target interrupt spell if it is blue. Draw a card at the beginning of your next turn's upkeep. Another mountain. Ganax, Astral Hunter, 4 and a red. Flying, when it enters or another dragon enters, you, under your battlefield, create a treasure token. It is a 3/4, and it has a background which you can set up as commander and have a second commander, etc. That's for other stuff. Don't worry about it. Hazoret's Monument, 3 mana. It's a legendary artifact. Red creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Here we go. Maskwood Nexus, 4 mana. Creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield, so your hand and your library. You can pay 3 to tap it and create a blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. Changeling is every creature type. Mountain. Ruby Medallion, 2 mana. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Another mountain. Another mountain. Leyline Tyrant, 2 and 2 red. Flying. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. When Leyline Tyrant dies, you may pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. It's a 4/4. Gilded Lotus, 5 mana. You tap it to add 3 mana of any one color. And then 2 mountains. So as you can see with the dragons and the goblins coming together, even on their own, they don't do too bad stuff in combinations with, say, Jessica, where you can buff it, deal some damage, triple it. So you can still do some stuff even if you don't get the Maskwood Nexus out. So it still has potential to be pretty decent. I actually have never gotten the Maskwood Nexus out in a game, so I've never been able to do the Dragon Goblin combos, but I've still won some games because of the other combinations of cards that I have in there. Either the Goblins by themselves, the Dragons by themselves, maybe 1 or 2 of them out there, or even just my commanders themselves putting in some work. So I hope you enjoy that mono red Goblin Riders deck. I've still had a lot of fun with it, and hopefully you like it too, and you can do some fun stuff with it. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you later.